1963, JFK, or John F. Kennedy, signed Executive Order 11110 to restore control of the money supply back to the American people. With the stroke of a pen, JFK stripped the Federal Reserve of its power to loan money to the government at interest and declared that the privately owned Federal Reserve would soon be out of business. Now, within 5 months of doing that, JFK, of course, was assassinated.
This version is only in slow motion.
Then in walks Lyndon B. Johnson, and guess what he immediately reversed?
And I want to say this to the television audience. I made my mistakes, but in all of my years of public life, I have never profited from public service. I've earned every cent. And in all of my years of public life, I have never obstructed justice. And I think, too, that I can say that in my years of public life, that I welcome this kind of examination, because people have got to know whether or not their president's a crook. Well, I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got.
Good evening. This is the 37th time I have spoken to you from this office, where so many decisions have been made that shape the history of this nation. Each time I have done so to discuss with you some matter that I believe affected the national interest. In all the decisions I have made in my public life, I have always tried to do what was best for the nation. Throughout the long and difficult period of Watergate, I have felt it was my duty to persevere, to make every possible effort to complete the term of office to which you elected me. In the past few days, however, it has become evident to me that I no longer have a strong enough political base in the Congress to justify continuing that effort.
Conspiracy.
Conspiracy.
Conspiracy can be a noun or a verb. As a noun, conspiracy can mean 1. The act of 2 or more persons, called conspirators, working secretly to obtain some goal, usually understood with negative connotations. 2. An agreement between 2 or more persons to break the law at some time in the future.
1,000 feet up is a small hut. We are allowed about an hour and a half with bin Laden. We have submitted questions in advance. He agrees to answer most of them, but does not allow follow-up questions. Mr. bin Laden, you have declared a jihad against the United States. Can you tell us why?
The U.S. government has committed acts that are extremely unjust, hideous, and criminal through its support of the Israeli occupation of Palestine. And we believe the U.S. is directly responsible for those killed in Palestine, Lebanon, and Iraq. Due to its subordination to the Jews, the arrogance of the United States regime has reached the point that they occupied Arabia, the holiest place of the Muslims, who are more than 1 billion people in the world today. For this and other acts of aggression and injustice, we have declared jihad against the U.S.
Is the jihad directed against the U.S. government or United States troops in Arabia? What about U.S. civilians in Arabia or the people of the United States?
We have focused our declaration of jihad on striking at the US soldiers inside Arabia, the country of the two holy places, Mecca and Medina. In our religion, it is not permissible for any non-Muslim to stay in Arabia. Therefore, even though American civilians are not targeted in our plan, they must leave. We do not guarantee their safety.
And now we're being bombarded with messages that Osama bin Laden is planning to attack the United States of America and Israel. And I'm telling you, be prepared for a major attack. But it won't be Osama bin Laden. It will be those behind the New World Order. Can you believe what you have been seeing on CNN today, ladies and gentlemen? Can you believe it? Supposedly, a CNN reporter found Osama bin Laden, took a television camera crew with him, went into Osama bin Laden's hideout, interviewed him and his top leadership, his top lieutenants and colonels and generals in their hideout. This is a CNN reporter with a camera crew. And he came out and told everybody, within 3 weeks, Osama bin Laden is going to attack the United States and Israel. Now, don't you think that's kind of strange, folks? You see, because the largest intelligence apparatus in the world, with the biggest budget in the history of the world, has been looking for Osama bin Laden for years and years and years, and can't find him. The FBI also, under the leadership of Louis Freeh, has been looking for Osama bin Laden for years and years and years and years and years and many years, and can't find him. Some doofus jerk-off reporter with a camera crew waltzes right into his hideout and interviews him. And you know what his budget is? Zip, zilch, nothing. Now, that tells us two things. Either everyone in the intelligence community and all of the intelligence agencies of the United States government are blithering idiots and incompetent fools, including the entire apparatus of the FBI and all of their personnel, or they're lying to us. They're not looking for him at all. And the second is the truth. You see, the CIA created Osama bin Laden. They recruited him. They trained him. They found his leadership. They brought them all together. They showed them how to fight the Soviet Union in Afghanistan, and when that was over, they still continued to fund him and train him, and they're now using him to help bring about world government by making him the big boogeyman because they can't use Saddam Hussein anymore. Did you ever hear of Osama bin Laden before you heard of Saddam Hussein? When did you start hearing of Osama bin Laden? It was after Saddam Hussein and Iraq were supposedly neutralized in the Gulf War, because they needed a new boogeyman. A reporter from CNN and his little camera crew got into Osama bin Laden's secret hideout and conducted an interview. If you don't believe me, tune into CNN. They're probably running it right now as I'm speaking. And if you believe it, you are one of the stupidest jerks that ever lived on the face of this earth. And whatever is going to happen that they're going to blame on Osama bin Laden, don't you even believe it. Another social illusion, social engineering project to change the minds and the attitudes and the beliefs of the people of the world, and especially the United States, to bring about one world socialist totalitarian government. The CIA, the NSA, the FBI, the Defense Intelligence Agency could not find Osama bin Laden in their wildest dreams. But Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols could, and recruit him to be their partner in blowing up the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building. Bullshit! How stupid can you be? These guys didn't have a nickel between them. Not a nickel between them. How dumb can you, how stupid can you be? So why do all these fools believe this charade? That a CNN reporter and his little camera crew can do with all the money and all the assets and all the eavesdropping and all the intelligence and all the satellites and all the undercover operatives in the world, can never do. It's because they're not trying. They don't want to. Osama bin Laden is their creation, and he is serving them well. When in hell are all you people going to wake up? Are you kidding me? I mean, is this some kind of incredible joke that people are so stupid they'll fall for this?
I went through the Pentagon and I saw Secretary Rumsfeld and Deputy Secretary Wolfowitz. I went downstairs just to say hello to some of the people on the Joint Staff who used to work for me. And one of the generals called me in. He said, "Sir, you got to come in. You got to come in and talk to me a second." I said, "Well, you're too busy." He said, No. He says, "We've made the decision. We're going to war with Iraq." This was on or about the 20th of September. I said, "We're going to war with Iraq. Why?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "I guess they don't know what else to do." So I said, "Well, did they find some information connecting Saddam to Al-Qaeda?" He said, No. He says, "There's nothing new that way. They just made the decision to go to war with Iraq." He said, "I guess it's like we don't know what to do about terrorists, but we've got a good military and we can take down governments." And he said, "I guess if the only tool you have is a hammer, every problem has to look like a nail." So I came back to see him a few weeks later, and by that time we were bombing in Afghanistan. I said, "Are we still going to war with Iraq?" And he said, "Oh, it's worse than that." He said, he reached over on his desk, he picked up a piece of paper, and he said, I just got this down from upstairs," meaning the Secretary of Defense's office today, and he said, "This is a memo that describes how we're going to take out 7 countries in 5 years, starting with Iraq and then Syria, Lebanon, Libya, Somalia, Sudan, and finishing off Iran." I said, "Is it classified?" He said, "Yes, sir." I said, "Well, don't show it to me." And I saw him a year or so ago, and I said, "You remember that?" He said, "Sir, I didn't show you that memo. I didn't show it to you."
I'm sorry, what did you say his name was?
I'm not going to give you his name.
So go through the countries again.
Well, starting with Iraq, then Syria and Lebanon, then Libya, then Somalia and Sudan, and then back to Iran.
Gary. Mental conception, reflection, consideration. Coherent statement or set of ideas that explains observed facts or phenomena, or which sets out the laws and principles of something known or observed, the hypothesis confirmed by observation, experiment, etc. The underlying principles or methods of a given technical skill, art, etc., as opposed to its practice.
The effects of the agent?
Everyone's moving. Delirium was produced experimentally. They had no idea what the drug was going to do to us. They just moved the monkey out of the way and put me in there behind it.
Produce incapacitation. We had millions of dollars to work with, and I built the program around that. Next question.
There may and likely will come a time in which we have both an airborne disease that is deadly. And in order for us to deal with that effectively, we have to put in place an infrastructure, not just here at home, but globally, that allows us to see it quickly, isolate it quickly, respond to it quickly. So that if and when a new strain of flu, like the Spanish flu, crops up 5 years from now or a decade from now, we've made the investment. And we're further along to be able to catch it.
And guess what? The former president was not politicizing the possibility of a pandemic on the horizon. He was sending a message to Congress at the time that a deadly pandemic is not a partisan issue.
I cannot think of a better example of an area where we should all agree than passing this emergency funding to fight Ebola and to set up some of the public health infrastructure that we need to deal with potential outbreaks in the future. How do you argue with that? That is not a partisan issue. That is a basic common sense issue that all Americans can agree on. For the most part, people have recognized this is not a Democratic issue or a Republican issue. It's about the safety and security of the American people. So let's get it done. This can't get caught up in normal politics. We need to protect the American people, and we need to show the world how America leads.
Take a look at some of these charts.
I'd love to.
We're going to look.
Let's look.
And if you look at death,
It's starting to go up
here's
again.
one. Well, right here, the United States is lowest in numerous categories. We're lower than the world.
Lower than the
Lower
world.
than
What is that?
Europe.
In what? In what?
Take a look. Right here. Here's case death.
Oh, you're doing death as a proportion of cases. I'm talking about death as a proportion of population. That's where the US is really bad.
Well,
Much worse than South Korea, Germany, etc.
you can't do that. You have
Why
to go.
can't I do that?
You have to go by. You have to go by where. Look, here is the United States. You have to go by the cases.
So Donald Trump is saying the US is lower than the world. Let's have a look at that. Taking data from the leading authority on the virus, the Johns Hopkins Coronavirus Resource Center, which is based in the US. Here are the 5 countries with the highest total of confirmed cases. America is far, far above the other 4. Next, the number of deaths in the 5 worst hit countries. America is again a long way clear. And this shows the top 5 when we look at the number of new daily confirmed cases over the last week. America has been in front, it's just dipped below India. But that raw data doesn't include population size, doesn't account for it, so let's add that in. This shows the number of deaths per 100,000 people. The UK is on top there, the US is 4th. Many consider that to be the single most helpful guide in assessing the impact of the virus in each country. The president, though, was focused on the mortality rate. That's the number of deaths compared to the number of confirmed cases. Again, the UK is on the top, the US is 14th, so not top, but certainly not lower than the world, as President Trump claimed.
Every day being reported. The president said just this weekend that the U.S. has the lowest mortality rate in the world. Is that factually correct?
Not at all, not even close. I mean, by almost every measure, the U.S. is one of the worst. And I think we can change that, but it's an ugly picture.
Why are we one of the worst?
We actually had criteria for opening up that said you had to have cases declining, and we opened up with cases increasing. We somehow got masks as this politicized thing that, somehow, and some like harbinger of freedom that just covering your mouth was awful. And, so now we can move forward. Now we have the president saying that he hears from some people that it's good to wear a mask. And so let's run with that and try to get compliance levels up to something like the European level.
I want to turn now to the race for a cure. We've seen a lot of promising news this week on the vaccine front. What do you make of the results from AstraZeneca and Moderna?
Well, it's very hard to characterize complex scientific things in a sort of simple to understand format. We don't know if these vaccines will work. We don't know if they'll work to avoid deaths. We don't know if they'll work to avoid transmission. That's why we're working on so many first-generation vaccines and a whole bunch of second generation vaccines that, although they'll take more time, they are more likely to be extremely effective. It's great the US government has been willing to fund vaccine manufacturers. Our foundation is partnered with them on that. That's something in my regular phone calls with Dr. Fauci, we update each other on, okay, how are we working with various companies? Which ones do we think
So next week marks a huge milestone. We have Operation Warp Speed is going to begin phase 3 for 4 of these vaccines. Right here in the US, they're trying to do 30,000 for each of those 4 vaccines, about 120,000 people totally. When will we know? How do we know if these vaccines are working?
Well, there's 3 things you'd like from a vaccine. You'd like it to be very safe in all the populations that you indicated for, no side effects. You'd like it to block transmission, and you'd like it to avoid the individual who gets the vaccine getting sick. The phase 3 endpoint is slightly different than those things so that we can accumulate events quickly. So we aren't doing it like a long-term vaccine thing. And even calling it warp speed is scary because it suggests that you're willing to make trade-offs against safety, which you should never be willing to do. The FDA is being pressured to allow what's called just a correlate approval. Fortunately, they've held the line on that to this point because we wouldn't know enough just based on the antibody levels. And, these trials, the bad news, of course, when we have many cases is good news for the trials in that they may accumulate events faster than they would have otherwise. But there'll be a lot of uncertainty about how good these vaccines are. The first generation, they said a 50% effectiveness, and they won't know the duration there. So these are going to be likely partial solutions that will improve over time. And so it's too bad, people think that just that phase 3 approval will be the end of the epidemic.
Well, I want to ask side effects. The side effects for the Moderna vaccine sound concerning. We looked. After the second dose, at least 80% of participants experienced a systemic side effect, ranging from severe chills to fevers. So, are these vaccines safe?
Well, the FDA, not being pressured, will look hard at that. The FDA is the gold standard of regulators, and their current guidance on this, if they stick with that, is very, very appropriate. And the side effects were not super severe. That is, it didn't cause permanent health problems for the things there. Moderna did have to go with a fairly high dose, and so to get the antibodies. Some of the other vaccines are able to go with lower doses to get responses that are pretty high, including the J&J and the Pfizer. And so there's a lot of characteristics of these vaccines. It's great that we have multiple of them that are
Bill,
going out there. And yes, I think
you know the data better than I do. But the data showed that everybody with a high dose had a side effect.
Yeah, but some of that is not dramatic, where it's just super painful. But yes, we need to make sure there's not severe side effects. The FDA, I think, will do a good job of that, despite the pressure.
How many doses of the vaccine will we need?
Well, none of the vaccines at this point appear like they'll work with a single dose. That was the hope at the very beginning. Maybe one of them, particularly in the second generation, won't surprise us. We hope just 2, although in the elderly, sometimes it takes more. And so making sure we have lots of elderly people in the trial will give us that data.
backlash against the Warren Commission report. And a lot of people weren't buying it. So the CIA came out with a dispatch, and it said that the people who don't believe in the Warren Commission, we're going to call them conspiracy theorists. And then it gave a number of rationales why conspiracy theorists are conspiracy theorists. The New York Times and the Washington Post used the word conspiracy theorist about once a year prior to that 1967 dispatch. But after that 1976-7 dispatch, the term conspiracy theory and conspiracy theorist just shot up exponentially in both papers. So people just automatically think of something, they go, oh, conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
They're drinking the Kool-Aid.
Yeah.
They have no idea that they're drinking the Kool-Aid.
Very interesting to see how easily people get sucked in.
And conspiracy theorists, because I said exactly what I just said. And I refuse to back down despite all the smears thrown at me, because I learned during COVID. I learned when they told us that it came from a bat in the Himalayas. I learned when they told us the vaccine was safe and effective. I learned when they told us that ivermectin was horse paste, that you better keep asking questions because it's the only thing that keeps us free. Thank you so much.
You better keep asking questions because it's the only thing that keeps us